Welcome back to the Heal with God podcast. Each week, we explore a new theme for healing. And today, we're talking about something that is quietly stealing your peace, probably for many of us, anyways. And it is our relationship with time. So, if you've ever felt like you're doing all the right things, but you still can't catch your breath, or that maybe your to do list keeps growing, I'm sitting down with my friend Lissa Figgins, a Christian business strategist and the founder of Redeem Her Time. She helps women move from chaos to clarity by aligning their calendars with their calling. Lissa discovered that business isn't really a scheduling problem. In fact, it's a heart issue. And today we're going to share how surrendering her time to God transformed the way that she lives, works, and rests. So grab your coffee, take a deep breath, and let's talk about what it really means to redeem the time from the inside out. Hey there, welcome to Heal with God. I'm Heather O'Brien, your prophetic healing coach. This is your place where we go deeper into hearing God's voice and finding your healing through Jesus. If you're a Christian who's prayed all the prayers but you still feel stuck and you're ready for breakthrough, you're in the right place. Let's dive in because healing with God is possible for you too. Warrior, I remember this season I was doing everything I need to do, therapy, prayer meetings, deliverance sessions, and I was still feeling like something was blocking me from hearing God clearly. I was showing up, but I was tired, anxious, and wondering if I was just too broken. What I didn't realize was that God wasn't ignoring me. I just didn't know how to tune into His voice in the middle of my pain. And that's why I created the Prophetic Healing Workshop. In just 60 minutes, I want to walk you through my 3-step spirit-led process to hear God and uncover what's really going on beneath the surface. You'll break agreements with lies holding you back and let Him show you exactly what to release so you can finally feel peace again. It's live every third Monday of the month, and early signups might even get live coaching and prayer during the session. There's no experience needed. I want you to just come as you are. So go sign up now at heatherobrien.net/workshop. That's heatherobrien.net/workshop. And let's hear God for your healing together. So welcome, Lissa. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited for this conversation, and I am looking forward to hearing more about you to help our listeners get to know a little bit about this Redeem Your Time podcast and what it is that you do to help your people over on your show.
Well, I love having this conversation because time literally affects everyone. There is no person on the planet that doesn't have to think about time, or shouldn't be thinking about their time. And here's the thing, time is the great equalizer. Every single person listening got 24 hours today, right? No matter how much you wanted 25, we didn't, unless it was that one day a year when we have daylight savings time for those of us that live in certain parts of the country. And even then, it doesn't change our life to have the extra hour.
Yeah.
And so really this is something that, we are facing every single day. And most of us feel like there's never enough. And, as I think about what you talk about here on the podcast, and you talk about, fear and guilt and shame and anxiety. And so there is so much of that around time. And that was actually part of my story, is that I had a lot of anxiety around my time, and it actually really started affecting every area of my life. And thankfully, the Lord didn't leave me there. He showed me what redeeming my time looks like, and that's what I get to help others with too.
I love that. So I'm thinking about the calendar now. A lot of times I say this, and I'll say if you look at your 2 C's, you'll know where like what's really most important to you. So if you tell me you put in God first, I'm like, let's see. So I say look at your checkbook and your calendar.
Yeah.
And those 2 C's will reflect back to you if you really are putting God first. And so we're talking to Christians here today, and I just want to take off any shame, any condemnation here. What we're going to do is help you heal this part of the time and the busyness that comes and steals from us. So would you teach that like busyness isn't a disordered calendar necessarily, it's actually a disordered heart? Can you share more about that? And maybe you realize that time management wasn't really solving your problems, and what revelation changed for you?
Yeah, because if it was just a calendar issue, then that cute planner you pick up at Target or you order on Amazon would change everything. And
Mm.
it doesn't, because it's really a deeper issue. So my story is I've been the planner girl from back in grade school when you have that assignment notebook and you write down the things you have to do. And I'm the girl who, even till recently would write things on her list I already did just for the satisfaction of checking it off. I've always had a planner. I've always had time blocks. I've always eaten up any time management advice I could get. Give me a productivity hack, give me, a tip, trick, tool, that I can find a way to get back more time and things like that. I was always chasing all of those things, but really what I was chasing was my fear of not enoughness. That my time wasn't enough is where it would start, right? Because it never felt like the 24 hours is enough for everything that I had to do that day. That my doing wasn't enough.
Mhm.
Like I was the girl who like I couldn't stop from the time I got up to the time I went to bed. I always was doing something, and it still didn't feel like it was enough because, like you said, the to-do list doesn't shrink, it grows, and
Yeah.
so we never get to the bottom of it. And then eventually, it that slippery slope went to I'm not enough. And I was really like basing my value and my worth on my doing and on my accomplishing of this checklist or, this time block, that I had all these things stacked up in my calendar, but when one gets off, we know what happens. They all run into each other. And so anyway, long story short, that's how I lived for a long time. And
Yeah.
I just pasted a smile on and I just, made it happen. I've got 3 kids. My husband is a police officer, but he also served in the army. And so he would be gone for up to a year at a time. And I'd be at home running the household, running a business, running a ministry, like running myself ragged, really. And I felt that like, pit in my stomach, tension in my shoulders. And then I started noticing a ball in my throat. And at first I was like, oh, maybe I'm just not chewing my food enough. So I tried, drink more water, chew my food better, didn't change anything. So of course, who has time to figure it out? I ignored it. Once it had been about a year, I was talking to some of my really close friends and I had had a cancer scare in my thyroid. And so all of a sudden I was like, what if there's something growing in there? Maybe I need to get it checked out. So I promised them I would. I went to this doctor. He tried all kinds of different things to see if he could figure out the source of it. Finally, he scoped it. He sits me down in his office one day and he says, Lissa, I have good news. There is nothing growing in your throat,
Mm.
but you have hystericus globus. And he sat there with this look on his face. I know. Whenever I say this, people look at me like,
Yeah.
what in the world? That's exactly what I thought. I was sitting there going, am I supposed to know what this is? I've never heard of hystericus globus. So he goes, okay, globus, like a globe, you have the sensation of a ball. And he said hystericus, and he starts swirling his finger next to his head like you're crazy.
Mm.
And he thought it would make me feel better to say this is where they get the word hysterectomy from because they thought women were going crazy in midlife. He's
Ugh.
like, you just have a lot of anxiety around all the things you're trying to get done,
Oh.
and I'm happy to prescribe you a pill. Now, I
Oh
am not
boy.
against medication in any way, shape, or form, so I want to make that very clear. But I knew for me, it was going to be the band-aid that would allow me to keep pushing at that pace. That
Okay, now.
wasn't going to change anything, right? It was just going to, allow me to keep going.
Uh-huh.
I wish I could say everything changed in an instant. It didn't, but it did change in that moment. God got my attention that there was a problem and that time management wasn't fixing it. And it was interesting. My dad had seen this book on Amazon, and sure enough, it shows up on my front door with a note saying, Love Dad. And it was called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by a pastor named John Mark Comer. I'm actually about to read it for the 4th time with my clients starting tomorrow. And like it was in that book that I realized this is really not a calendar issue. This is a heart issue. Hurry is a problem.
Yeah.
And it is not going to get better unless I like really get intentional about how to get rid of it. And so I remember walking into church one day and asking a friend of mine, how's life been this week? You know what she said? Busy, the B word.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Busy,
yeah.
busy,
Yeah.
busy. Oh, just staying busy and pasted that smile on her face like I did too. And it was that day sitting in church in the pew that Redeem Her Time was born. We were in a sermon series out of Ephesians, and all of a sudden, Ephesians 5 jumped off the page. Look carefully how you live, not as unwise, but as wise, redeeming the time because these are difficult days. And I was like, okay, there's a different way to approach time. There's a whole different way, right? It does not have to be this badge of honor that
Mhm.
this is not what God intended for his children. And
Oh
so
my
my mission
goodness.
is to help, people. I specifically work with women. So the guys who are listening, this all applies to you too. Instead of seeing time as an obstacle, how do we see it as an opportunity?
Yeah.
Instead of seeing it as something that we have to manage, which we'll get into what that means, actually it's something that God gives us. It's a gift to multiply his kingdom. It's actually the very resource that we need to do that. And so when we change our perspective and our heart posture around it, now we can pick up the planner, which I did go on to create my own planner. I have a paper planner that I offer, the Redeem Her Time planner. Now we can pick up, some of the tools that can be helpful with the right heart.
Right. Oh my goodness. I'm hearing so many nuggets here. And I love that book. I I often say hurry is actually demonic.
Mm,
It's not just a problem. It's actually demonic. And
Yeah.
I can't find a time when Jesus was in a hurry. I can't find a time when that's actually a good thing to be in a hurry. And just like you said, your friend said, you said, "How are you?" And they said, "Busy." I have, I've actually, I feel so convicted if that's coming to my mind and I purpose in my heart to not say that, I have to come up with something extra. Sometimes I
Yeah.
say, "Oh, my life has been really full this week." And that feels good. I'm like, I like to have things to do. I like
Sure.
to have things to steward, people to, relationships to steward. And that feels good to say it was a full good week. But saying it was busy, never, there's not a positive connotation attached to that at all.
Yeah, because what busy means is I have to pick up the pace in order to keep up. And
Right.
then I'm not really present to anyone or anything. I'm
Uh-huh.
just for so long, and I wish I could go back and redo my years when my kids were younger. I was the mom who was in the room but not really in the room. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like it was family movie night, but mom's got her laptop because she still got an email to write or a post to create or some whatever. Or it's I'm playing with them on their floor and I'm like collecting dust bunnies and reorganizing the toy bin. And it was just like I was there, but I wasn't really there because I was
Uh-huh.
always thinking about what I didn't get done already or what I need to do next or what, I noticed needed to happen in front of me.
Uh-huh.
I once heard this busy, someone defined it as being under Satan's yoke.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
know?
Uh-huh.
And I think it's his number one tactic because
Yeah.
he knows, I mean, yes, he can try and throw, like the blatant sins at us and things like that, but it's when he can keep us busy and distracted. In fact, in the Screw Tape Letters, that's some of the advice. I know it's a fictional story, but like keep them busy and distracted. Then they're no threat to
Yep.
the enemy. And because
Exactly.
we're no use to the kingdom,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
so here's
So good.
where it really comes down to a heart issue,
Right.
first, and then, a calendar. But the problem is that, wide is the road of those who, like are busy and are going down that path.
Uh-huh.
John 10 says, I've come to give you life, and that does not mean a life that's too full, a life that is full, right?
Uh-huh.
But the enemy comes to steal, kill, and destroy. And I think
Right.
that's number one commodity is our time and attention.
So something you said just a minute ago was that you felt like the time it was attached to your worth and your value. And so many of us Christians, the women especially, I think can really relate to this. We find our worth tied to how much we get done.
Yeah.
To
And
how,
guys too. I mean, accomplishments and, promotions or whatever that is. I think it's all of us, really.
right. And so how do we shift from striving and performance into the stewardship and peace with God's timing? How do we shift that?
Yeah. Well, really, our worth isn't in our what, it's in our who.
Mm,
God didn't call us to do a whole bunch of things. Now, we do things, and what I teach is that when we do truly see ourselves as stewards, it should motivate productivity. It should motivate profitability because we're doing something intentionally with what he's entrusted to us, but that's not where our value is. And there's a difference between doing things for God. That was me for a really long time. I would sit on the couch. I called Jesus on the telephone, quote unquote, when I was 3, and I've, been walking with him ever since. And, so I've been super consistent about having that time with him. But then it was like Alyssa would leave him on the couch and then I would go about my day, right? And I would, it's not that I was doing things that were completely in a different direction, but I wasn't really doing them with him.
mm,
And I think that makes such a difference, right?
wow.
And what do? We start our day and we jump into, the notifications. We jump into the things that are flashing on our phone, that the little red numbers that we don't like, the tabs that are open and things like that. And God is just inviting us to say, will you come and just be with me? The most important time of the day that we can spend,
Mhm.
especially if we want to get out of striving and performance and into stewardship, is meeting with him and not jumping into our to-do list and letting him fill us up and letting him say who we are. I mean, he chose us before the creation of the world.
Right,
Hello. That
right,
means,
right, right.
yeah, it doesn't mean we don't do anything, but it means that, like, my doing is not earning me anything.
Mhm.
And so here's where when we start seeing our time as stewards, and here's what's so important. So a steward is someone who has been entrusted with a resource that belongs to someone else. They are not the owner. And their role, a steward's role, is to guard it and grow it. Not
Oh,
just guard, but also to grow, to expand it, to bring back more of a return. Think about the parable of the talents, right? And that one guy who went and buried his talent out of fear, he didn't really know the master. He thought the master was, going to be this shrewd man. He thought the master was going to be upset, right? So he went and buried it. and just guarded it. And what did he hear? Like, get away from me, you wicked and lazy servant.
Hmm.
But it wasn't because it was about like he should have been doing more. I mean, he should have just been doing differently because of understanding who he was. He was a steward, right?
Hmm.
Those other two, they went out. We don't know exactly what they did. They probably traded, they invested, they did different things, but they got double a return. They expanded the kingdom.
Hmm.
What they heard in response was, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with little. Let me entrust you with more.
Hmm.
It is this balance. Number one, we have to know the owner. And
Oh,
here's something that one of my clients read this in a book of hers, and it's so tied in with what we're talking about. When a steward starts acting like an owner, they become an embezzler.
oh,
When I start acting like I own my time, I'm actually embezzling the resources that God belong to God,
okay now.
right? I mean, that's a little like
Whoa.
makes you go, ooh.
Wow.
Yeah, when I see it as stewardship, this has been entrusted to me. So I'm not just going to like, if you were to give me, Heather, say you gave me $1,000 before you go on a trip and you're like, Lissa, I want you to keep this safe and I want you to invest this on my behalf while I'm on this trip and I will check back with you when I get back.
Uh,
Guaranteed, I'm not just leaving it on the counter where anybody can grab it. I'm also not shopping on Amazon with it, right? Just because it feels good in the moment. Like I'm intentionally looking for opportunities of where can I invest this? Because I know this belongs to someone else. I know your purposes, behind what you want to do with it. And so I'm looking for ways that I can do that, right?
wow.
And so here's where like it's not about performance, but there is a healthy sense of responsibility that God has entrusted this time to me.
Hmm.
How am I doing with it?
Yeah.
And I say, we don't want to be on the hamster wheel, but we also don't want to be on the couch binging Haagen-Dazs and Netflix
Right.
and just letting it go to waste because we can't get the time back,
Right.
right? It is
And
this
so
urgency.
that's so good. I love the stewardship analogy, and the time isn't actually ours. It's something that's been gifted to us that we need to steward. And it's not just a gift to sit on, like you say, but it's a gift to steward. And what I've heard you talk about multiplying time instead of managing it. Tell us more about that. What does that practically look like for people who are already maxed out?
Yeah.
We're tapped out of our time. So how do we multiply it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, like we said earlier, we can't multiply the amount of hours we get, but we can multiply the impact that those hours have,
Mm,
right? And I call it RODI, return on time invested. And I've actually created something called the RODI method because in any area of your life, whether it's in your faith, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's in your health, whether it's in your business, a ministry, the current results you have are the roadie, the return on time invested. So what have you either invested or not invested time in that area up till now? And that can make us feel that play the blame game. I call it the shoulda, woulda, couldas. That's not going to serve us. So I go, okay, right? But the good news is where you will be in that area will also be the consequence of the roadie from now moving forward, right? So
mm,
now you have this choice to go, how am I going to invest this? And here's where I think there's so many principles, and especially in the Bible, that are related between time and money. Like you shared that earlier, that shows what we truly value, where we spend our time, where we spend our money. But unlike money, we can't get time back. But we do have three choices with both time and money. I can waste it, throw it out the window, waste it on things that don't really matter and don't add any value. I can spend it. So maybe I do buy a really cute top, or I maybe do buy, a great cup of coffee or something like that, but it's not really changing anything. It doesn't have like a ripple effect. Or I can invest it. And when you invest something, there's an expectation of a return, right? And so
yeah.
this is what we need to do. Here's where there's a difference between managing something and stewarding it, which is multiplying. So a manager literally means to keep something contained and controlled. That's what that one guy did when he buried his talent. He just kept it contained. He kept it from getting away, right? I call it playing whack-a-mole all day long. How many of us are trying to manage our time and it feels like we just get those time blocks, all set up, or we just get, whatever, we just get that project all lined up or whatever it is, and we're just playing whack-a-mole, trying to keep everything in order because life happens. And it's this constant game of trying to keep things contained. It's a very notice with my hands if you're watching the video, like it's a very like my hands are trying to keep things under control and I'm not allowing room for growth and expansion.
Mm,
I steward something, it's an open-handedness, right? I have to receive this as a gift. Now I actually have to let go because if I keep it closed-fisted, it's not going to grow, right? So just like that seed, I can't like keep it closed-fisted. I have to go put it in the ground, right? There's faith in that. And that's where the growth is able to happen because I'm giving this thing now space to multiply. And so, really, I believe that as believers, we have an unfair advantage. You know what I call
Okay.
the
Wait.
time
Is
stewardship multiplier? Like, we have this bigger purpose behind our time.
uh-huh.
We have, the word, we have the spirit, we have the wisdom of the people that God has put in our life, right? To really make these intentional choices about where to invest such that it will bring, a return and ultimately build his kingdom. And
Okay.
isn't that way better than just I managed to get through the day or
Uh-huh.
another year and I don't have much to show for it except quite a bit of exhaustion and a lot of anxiety.
Yeah, for sure. So you're saying the return on investment can what would it be, for instance? What is our return on investment if we were stewarding what God gave us? We realize He gave us this time, we're stewarding it. What's a practical way to look at the return on investment whenever you're stewarding it well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, let's talk about your health. Okay.
Oh,
One of the things that we need to put time into is getting sleep. And I'm especially to this age in life where if I don't get, a good 8 hours of sleep, I'm feeling it the next day, right? So I
okay.
can see from my return on time invested, did I invest my time wisely, or did I not? Then
Mhm.
maybe with how you're eating, with how you're moving your body, like you just look at your result. Your result is the return of how you've invested your time.
Okay.
So, like, they are the natural consequences of what we have chosen to do. If you want to, grow a relationship,
Uh-huh.
like you are going to see in that connection being developed, like, have I been investing time
Mm.
into this relationship? Or am I just, like you said earlier, am I just saying that? We can say
Uh,
that our
mhm.
family's important, but they're not getting our focused and full attention. We can say
Uh-huh.
it's important, right? So, yeah, we have only to look at our results and we can see. Okay, am I really stewarding this? Meaning, am I
Uh-huh.
investing this with this goal of growing it
Mhm.
so that God's getting more glory?
I love
You know,
that.
you asked about like what happens when somebody already feels like they're maxed out.
Uh-huh.
One of the things that I teach is this concept called order determines capacity. And behind me over here, I have this like I have Skittles and oranges in this jar, and I won't take the time to do it right now, but it's like the river rocks and the pebbles visual that you might have seen. I take everything out. I put the Skittles in. I'm like, this is how most people live. It's just the Skittles of the day, the notifications, the ring ding pings, the oh shoot, I forgot that, just everything feels really random. And then you go to like put in the oranges, which are the things that matter, our faith walk, our relationships, our health,
Mhm.
our the work we're called to do, the money that we're called to, to invest, even the passions God given us to do, the home we're called to care for, right? There's not room for them all because the Skittles took up so much space. But what's so interesting is if you take all of it out, I did this in front of my friends' kids the other day, and they were like, "Is this magic?"
Oh.
Because what happens is if you put the oranges in first, then you pour the Skittles in.
Uh-huh.
There's room for all of it, and none of it actually the exact same amount. And they're watching me, and they're like, "I'm like, I didn't change the amount of Skittles, did I?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, "I didn't change the number of oranges, did I?" No, I didn't change the container size. I
Mhm.
just changed the order. And so
Yeah.
I think that's really what's key is we are
Cool.
letting everyone and everything else fill up our time, and then we say, "I don't have time for the things that matter." Well, yes, because we were letting somebody else decide the order. So we have to know what's a Skittle, what's an orange,
Uh-huh. Okay,
right?
I love this so much. I'm like, is so vital to know what should go first. So, like the very first commandment out of the 10 is put God first. Basically,
Mhm.
just put God first. And I think about that with Bible, worship, prayer, community. If you're on your healing journey, are you making it a priority? If you're an entrepreneur, are you doing the thing that God said to do, or are you adding a whole bunch of fluffy things to it? If you're a mom, or you're really focusing on one particular role in your life, sometimes I find that the more roles I have in my life, the more I'm stewarding them. Just like you said, I'm like I don't know how all this fits. People ask me, okay, I guess I need to go here for just a second. This goes with your example with oranges and Skittles. People ask me all the time, how do you get so much done in your life?
Mhm.
And I don't answer flippantly. In fact, I say, "Do you really want to know?" Or like I kind of test the waters because I'm like, you probably don't want to know because then you're gonna have something else you're gonna have to steward. I'm finna throw my pearls out here. But the answer is I put God first. I Sabbath and I take Sabbath seriously. And I follow the Ten Commandments, if you will. And so putting God first and Sabbathing is really the reason why I get so much done. Like I take a full day off out of the seven.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so true. There's a book that I read with my clients a few years ago that's called about sanctifying time, and it's not just about Sabbath, but it's how are we, treating our time differently as believers. And yes, it starts with how am I Sabbathing? And not just once a week, but also in your day.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
way that I teach, I teach a different version of time blocking because I think most time blocks are just a glorified to-do list with a timestamp on it, and it just you're trying to chase them all day long. I had one client tell me, Lissa, I put all my time blocks in my calendar. I just kick the can down the road all day. I don't even know why I bother, right? So I call them time anchor zones. And there are refill time anchor zones and there are pour out time anchor zones, right? And I believe our day needs to start and end with a refill time.
Oh, yeah.
So many people are, like we have the habit of a like morning time with the Lord and things like that. But then we're working on something or binging or, folding laundry or whatever it is up until we go to bed and then wonder why we don't feel recharged and why we have a hard time resting, just like our phone, at some point it has to go back on the charger, right?
Hmm.
And I want to share with this one really significant thing that really shifts. There are two things that I say every time I work with people. Number one, you have time.
Yeah.
That key is so important because the enemy wants us to believe you don't have time. This is as long as you think you don't have time, then you're chasing what you don't think you have
Hmm.
instead of doing something with what you do have. And if you ever don't believe me, pick up your phone,
Yeah.
open up Screen Time. The average person is on their phone 4 hours and 37 minutes a day. I used to be a math teacher, so I did the math. That's just shy of 100 waking hours, waking days. If you take out the time to sleep, 100 days of your life going to this thing. And we say
Wow.
we don't have time.
Yeah,
Truth
exactly.
is, you do have time. You're
Yeah.
giving it to lesser things. So number one is that. Number two, I'm not here to manage it. I'm here to steward it, which means I am to intentionally invest it with an expectation of it multiplying the impact of it. But this third one is really what's key because so many people run around saying, "What time is it?" That's the question we ask, and then all of a sudden the fear and the anxiety comes in because we're behind.
Hmm.
Time got away from us. I should have already left the house. Now I'm going to be late. I didn't get that done. It took longer than I thought. Time got away, right? So I want to help your audience shift that question from what time is it, which creates the anxiety, to what is it time for?
Oh,
Almost the exact same question, just a slight difference of the words.
uh,
Time is it? What is it time for? It makes you slow down and think about the presence of your time and the purpose of your time.
mm,
And so if you are ever feeling like I am just all over the place, chances are you're trying to multitask or you're trying to cram a whole bunch of different kinds of things into one tight little space.
uh-huh.
And yeah, it's going to be frustrating and things are going to feel like there's not enough time.
Right.
So I teach how do you plan your week ahead, and we'll talk about that in a second, so that you know what it's time for before the week starts. But even in the moment, if like right now, you're feeling like as soon as you get off listening to this, just
Mhm.
simply ask the Lord, Lord, what is it time for? What am I
Yeah,
supposed to focus on right now? And give that your focus and see what difference that makes.
that's so good. I'm thinking like through my day, there's sometimes I think about I've got a million things I want to accomplish throughout the day, and I'll stop and I'll pray and I'll say, God, I do have a big to-do list today, but what's the right thing for me to do right now? What's the best thing for me to do right now?
Mhm.
And a lot of times he reorders it and he'll like today he was like, well, backtrack. You have this podcast here. You want to get ready for it by this time. And so you really only have this much time. You thought you had this much time, but you really only have an hour. So what can you do in an hour? And then I'm like, oh, that actually makes it really clear what I need to be working on. And it really helps me steward. And I love your question. What is it time for right now? And that's how God helped me this morning. It's time for this because this is how much time you actually have. You don't have all that other time you thought you did. And yeah, just talking to God throughout this process. I like to say the way that we get healed, the way that we uh, do all of this lack of without anxiety and things like that, it's like, what did God say? Can we hear God's voice through it all? And so asking him this question, that's a great prayer prompt is just ask God, well, what is it time for?
Mhm.
Ask God that instead of just trying to figure it out yourself, because a lot of times you might be surprised in what he redirects you to for that moment. And
Right.
I know he was doing that for me today. So we've talked about multiplying time, we've talked about stewarding time, and those are really the key things here. And you've said that basically when we're fixing our hearts and redirecting it towards stewardship and really realizing this is a heart issue, not a calendar issue. Do you have any practical rhythms or spiritual practices that we can do to help get our hearts aligned before our schedule fills up again.
Yes, yes. Before we do that, there was something you just were talking about I want
Oh,
to address. And
mhm.
that is when we know the answer to the question, what is it time for? It eliminates the guilt that I'm not doing something else.
Oh,
How many of us feel that guilt tug of war when we're working on our business? We're guilty. We shouldn't feel guilty. We're not with our family. We're with our family. We're thinking about the other things that we should be doing in our business or our ministry or fill in the blank, whatever that is, right?
mhm.
And, and then again, we're not fully present to anyone and anything. And we just, again, we have the shame and the blame and the shoulda, woulda, couldas that are coming in. And so when you know what it's time for, you can release the guilt. And so this is actually one of the things that I practice when I practice Sabbath as well, is like when that thought comes up, oh, I've got some time. I could work on this. Oh, I've got, like it's like, no, Lissa, that's not what it's time for. Right
Mhm.
now, it is time to reset and refill and be with the Lord and be with the people around you and be in worship and things like that. And so it allows me to like when those thoughts come up to like not feel guilty or feel like I should now jump on that, but just to let it sit.
That's so
So
good.
yeah. So I mean, we've already talked about like, I mean, like Sabbathing, which I think is so key. It's just like tithing. Like
Yeah.
trust me in this, like, do you believe that with God, 24/6 is enough?
Oh, come
I
on.
challenge you to test that and
Yeah.
see how it happens because so many people use, that Sabbath day as the catch-up day or the get ready for the weekday. And, and I'm not here to say if it's not 24 hours, you're doing it wrong, or whatever, but like, are you taking some time to set aside to just be like, I'm not doing, I'm just being and I'm reconnecting with the Lord and the things that are going to be refilling before the week and really praying through the week. And I believe that, we need to take time to map out what the next week looks like. I talk to so many women who are like, Lissa, and I'm sure guys have this too, but like I make plans and then life happens, like kind of a why bother? And I'm like, okay, well, let me ask you, does
Mhm.
it work when you don't make plans?
Oh,
No, you pinball all week long, all over the place. So like, I think a spiritual rhythm
mhm.
and I think good stewardship is sitting down, having some time in your weekly rhythm where you sit down and you pray over and preview and plan out the week ahead.
Mhm.
Also, the same thing the month ahead and the quarter ahead. Like, I think that's good stewardship rather than crash landing to Monday, hoping to make it till Friday and hoping that maybe you did something that was of value, with your time. Like, and part of that also includes building in margin and being able to look at the week ahead and say, here's where I know I'm going to need a little bit of, extra space, or I'm going to need some extra time to refill, or I'm going to have poured out like in a really big way. And so I'm going to block the rest of the day so nobody else can get on my calendar. And then you have to communicate that with the people around you. And I
Yeah.
think this is so key is that we can have a plan, but if nobody around us, especially those who live with us,
Yeah.
have any clue, whenever they need or think of something, they're going to be, hey, mommy, 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 or honey, 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 or whatever. And,
Yep.
we're going to feel like, and so, yeah, so that's really, just kind of that Sabbathing, taking time to really intentionally and purposefully plan out what your week looks like. And I teach this tool called the time anchor zones. And I teach you how to create what I call an ideal week template because I believe for most of us, 90 to 95% of what we do is pretty similar from week to week. There may be a few things that change around, but the main framework of a lot of our lives is very, routine and rhythms and things like that. And so when we're not reinventing the wheel every week or just looking at a blank page and going, oh yeah, shoot, I forgot that last week. But we have this plan that already has the oranges that matter and with when it's time for them. Now, when it's Monday, I don't have to worry about laundry if I know that that's not till
Right.
Thursday,
Yep.
you know? So it allows you to be present. It allows you to be more faithful and fruitful with the time you have when
Yeah.
you have the right kind of heart set and the right kind of tools.
So good. I love the idea, like even in having the calendar and thinking it through and praying through it before it even happens and having the map. It's like, okay, we give God permission. Okay, I do say this in my prayer. I say, God, I have these things planned for my day, but I give you permission to reorder them and restructure them how you see fit. And then when things, like you said, your person would say, I made a plan and nothing worked out. Well, I remind myself that I prayed that prayer, that
Right.
I gave God permission to restructure and move things around as He saw fit. And I have to remind myself of that sometimes because I forgot, oh, I prayed that. And so things got reordered, things got restructured, things it seemingly got canceled, but actually, and then I look back and I'm like, oh, that's good that that happened.
Sure.
It's really good. This last week, we all, like several of us in our house got sick. Man, it was actually kind of nice and refreshing. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but to just have a break for a minute. I didn't like being sick, but it was nice that other people could step in. I didn't have to save the day. I didn't have to become a hero and do it sick. No, people would rather me stay home. Honestly, they don't want to get what I got. And so it was nice to relax. It was nice to sit. And I had to keep reminding myself, Heather, you're allowed to sit still. You're allowed. You have permission. This isn't your Sabbath, but also you're allowed to be sick.
Yeah.
And
And what is
that's
it
hard to
time
say.
for when you're sick? It is time to rest because if you
Yeah.
ignore that, you're just going to make it worse. And
Yeah.
it's going to cost you more time, more
Yeah.
money, more stress, energy.
Isn't
Yeah.
that
Down the
so
road.
good? And it was so refreshing. And sometimes we just have to remind ourselves of what is it time for? I love that phrase. And just be okay with this is the season that you're in. Maybe it's a season, maybe it's a day, maybe it's a week, whatever it is. What season are you in? Maybe you're in a hustle season. Sometimes we are. Sometimes we're in a hustle season, but we also still need to have our spiritual practices in place where we have the maintenance, we have the infilling so that we can fill others, but we can still get filled up ourselves. Oh, this conversation has been such a blessing. I don't want to leave you where you haven't said everything you wanted to say, though, is if there's anyone who's feeling behind or inadequate, like I don't know how to do what they're saying. They're saying steward it and it doesn't make sense. Is there one last piece of encouragement you want to leave our listener here today?
Yeah, I would just say take a deep breath. You're not behind. You're not late, right? You have time. Like we have to remember that, right? And what is it that God has said that it is time for? That's where we have to go back to. And we have to trust. It's a two-part thing that I do my part. It's not just, okay, I'm sitting on the couch and expecting God to do it all, right? Like there is a healthy sense of responsibility, like we talked about as stewards, but I'm trusting God to do his part, God to do the multiplying. And that's how we see the 30, 60, 100-fold, which is a 10,000% increase. That's crazy. That's an only God thing, right? But when we are trusting Him, and I teach things about the laws of the harvest, and you alluded to that earlier, right? And just it's what it was a season for when you and I were talking, and like it's God is the one who can multiply the time and the results from them when we seek Him first, and we have the right tools and stuff in place. So, yeah.
So
And I
good.
would, if it's okay to share a little resource that we
Yeah,
do
tell me.
as well.
Yeah, tell everybody where we can find you. Remind us of the name of your show. She's got a podcast too, and she's got other resources. So tell us how we can get all of those things from you.
Yeah, so if you love podcasts, you can pop over to the Redeem Her Time podcast, where we talk about all things related to time and our roadie and faith and how all of this goes together. So you find us over there. Also, I put together a private podcast called The Scaling Secrets of the Top 1%. Because, like I mentioned earlier, 99% of people are running out around like the rest of the world, chasing after these things that Jesus talks about in Matthew 6 and missing out on, like when I seek him first and then I faithfully steward the time he's given me, the kind of abundant results and roadie that can come from that. And so anyway, if you want to go see like how can I multiply my hours and really see the impact scale, then go to redeemhertime.com/hours. You can binge. It's a quick 10 episode private podcast that you can binge, just in an afternoon, take with you on a walk or something like that. And it's going to start shifting not only your heart posture, but I'm going to give you some alternatives like the time anchor zones. That's a different way of approaching your time with the tools in your calendar.
Very good. Oh, that sounds fun. I'm excited to go try that myself. Well, Lissa, we just thank you so much for the refreshing reminders that you gave us that our time is not actually something to control, it's something to steward with God. And friend, if this conversation spoke to you today, maybe it's time to take a pause and ask God, where's my heart been racing ahead of my calendar? Healing often starts in those quiet moments of honesty, the ones that help us realign our doing with His leading. So you can connect with Lissa and dive deeper in her message over at Redeem Her Time. And if you're ready to heal what's been driving your busyness from the inside out, I'd love to remind you about the next prophetic healing workshop. They happen every third Monday of the month, where we walk through how to hear God clearly, heal emotional roots, and live in peace, even when life is full. And so until next time, remember that healing happens when we stop striving and start hearing God's voice. Phew, that was a whole word, wasn't it? Thanks for spending this time with me on Heal with God. Just a reminder, I'm a licensed minister, not a licensed therapist. So, this is all about spiritual encouragement and prayer, not replacing your doctor's advice. And if you haven't already, I want you to go grab your spot for the next free live workshop at heatherobrien.net/workshop. I'll walk you through my 3-step spirit-led process to hear God and heal what's really going on. Until next time, I'm praying blessings and favor chase you down.